What is burnout? By definition, burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion, and it's usually caused by periods of prolonged excessive stress. People get burnt out when they're exposed to very high levels of stress over a long period of time. That long period of time could actually vary. It could be a few weeks, could range from a few days to a few weeks to a few months to a couple of months and maybe a few years. Depending on the intensity and depending on the person's individuality, they become less or more prone to being burnt out. Burnout usually happens in relation to work when people are exposed to very high levels of work pressure. Could also happen to people who are not actually working, so such as students who have very heavy course loads. It could happen to athletes who have to train intensely, over many days and weeks. So training excessively could also lead to burnout. So anyone, within any age grade, any profession, could actually suffer from this condition. How do you know that you might be burnt out? There are a couple of signs to watch out for. One is chronic fatigue, feeling tired all the time. Another is you could have problems with your sleep. So if I notice that maybe you used to fall asleep at 10 p.m. and now you're either falling asleep too early or, probably being awake, at 2 a.m., you're still yet to fall asleep. Something that people could also report is having anxiety, towards going back into that environment where they have the high levels of pressure or stress. For instance, as a medical doctor, I might see someone tell me that, they stay awake 2 a.m. and they're thinking about the anxiety, thinking about and worrying about the work, the work burden. I've personally experienced this, as a GP. I had to cut down on my number of hours because, as a young GP, fresh GP, just fresh from training, I was burnt out. Is that intense? Is that insane? How very quickly people can and could be burnt out. People might suffer from muscle aches. I've mentioned chronic fatigue. They might start having headaches, brain fog, just general malaise. You might notice the change in appetite. It could be loss of appetite, or it might be overeating, binge eating. You might notice some people might start eating excessively, eating, a lot of junk and pasties, unhealthy food, or they might just be losing appetite, not really wanting to eat. Other things that you might notice is detachment and isolation. Essentially, people might become depressed when they're burnt out. You might notice that you become withdrawn, you're isolated, just lack motivation, and that is anxiety to, the source of stress. So whenever you think about going to work or you think about going to the lecture hall, or if you're an athlete, you think about your training sessions and how intense they could be. Just they will have those palpitations, and so you might have panic attacks or generalized anxiety. Emotional exhaustion. Some people might experience strain in their relationships, their marriage, friendship, even relationships between employees and employers, managers. So they might begin to have that strain. People might begin to lash out. People might begin to become impatient. As a medical doctor or even anyone, maybe a banker, you might notice that you become impatient towards your clients or your patients. A patient might say something, and if you're not very careful, you find yourself becoming, very irritable and short-tempered towards what they say. So those are signs of burnout. Your spouse might say something, and something that normally wouldn't be offensive, and you begin to take offense, pick on little things, and you're just irritable. I've mentioned brain fog. So brain fog is that feeling of as if there's something like a fog, right, either within your brain or just around your brain, and it just feels like your head is clogged and you can't think properly. People might experience lack of creativity. You might notice that you're just struggling with your creativity. Your creativity levels are down. If you're someone who used to be highly creative, you just might lose it. So depression, a lot of these things are signs and symptoms of depression. So burnout can essentially lead to anxiety and depression. Procrastination is something that is commonly reported in burnout. People just lack that motivation. It's closely tied to lack of motivation and depression. You just don't want to do things and you keep postponing things. Now, if you think or if you're certain that you're burnt out, the question is, what do you do? The first thing is to acknowledge the problem. Burnout is not a sign of weakness because a lot of people will experience self-doubt. It's something that people experience self-doubt, sense of failure. I qualified as a GP myself just February this year, 2024, and barely 4 or 5 months into being a GP, I was burnt out. In fact, if my supervisor, remembers in my last year of GP training, I mentioned to my supervisor that I was already exhausted mentally, and he told one of the other GPs that they need to organize a session for longevity. That was burnout. I was already burnt out even before I became a GP. That's the truth. Because as doctors, and I see this amongst people of different professions, mechanics, bankers. A lot of people come to me, they're depressed, they're burnt out, they want to be signed off from work for 1 or 2 weeks just so they can get themselves back, get back into that rhythm to prevent themselves from completely going off the radar and being, completely depressed. So I had to, this brings me to the next point on things you have to do. I had to adjust my work, my working hours. So adjusting your workload, either as a worker or a student or you're an athlete or whatever you do, adjusting your workload has been shown to significantly help alleviate symptoms or signs of burnout or the feeling of being burnt out. Seeking support from your colleagues, your fellow students, fellow athletes, whatever you do, seeking support from your manager, explaining how you're feeling, being open about how you're feeling. Remember, it is not a sign of failure, not a sign that you are weak. It's just a sign that the workload that is assigned to you is too much. So most times it's not about the person that is burnt out. Most times it's about the amount of work that person is dealing with. So feel free. Explain to your manager. Hopefully you have a good manager. Explain to your manager or your line manager how exactly you're feeling. You would like to adjust your workload because you don't think you're able to give your best. Prioritize self-care. Yoga, exercise, take a walk, eat healthily. You can do your indoor exercises, jog on the spot, you buy the bicycle, static bicycle. You can do those kind of things. Watch good movies. As an adult, you could watch cartoons. Cartoons are not for only children. Watch those animations, animes, cartoons that make you excited, that bring out the child that lies within your soul. Revive yourself, go on holidays, take breaks, make sure you take your annual leave, curtail how much extra work you do, maybe extra shifts, locums. It's good to do it to get some money because lack of money will also lead to more burnout. So you need about striking that balance between not overworking, okay, and obviously not being redundant because then the lack of income will also lead to anxiety and depression. So it's about making sure that the adequate amount of income is coming in whilst you're balancing how much work you have to deal with on a particular day. And I think as managers, potential managers, leaders in several organizations, the onus lies on us to actually ensure that the amount of work we are doing and the amount of work other members of staff are doing is not actually leading them to burnout. Because at the end of the day, people call in sick and there will be more short-staffed, and then it's just like a vicious cycle, of burnout. So I hope this video has been very impactful to you. To me, I think it has, because it's also been an opportunity to reflect on when I was just recently burnt out and how I was able to manage it. To tell you the truth, I am still burnt out because, in all honesty, I still struggle with my workload. It's a little bit better, cutting down the number of hours, but it's still there. You know what I mean? It's still there. Seeing patients 10 minutes, having to see 30 patients minimum in a day, usually more, plus heavy admin jobs and all that. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, you know what I mean? I enjoy the profession, but the actual job structure is exhausting. I don't think it's the best, you know what I mean? I think we can do better. same as many other organizations. So if you think this video has been useful, don't forget to smash the subscribe button, smash the like button, because more videos, more useful videos like this, I believe is useful, will be coming your way. Thank you very much.